Mother-in-law, you're free, right? If you're free, we're having a family gathering, so I'm counting on you for a meal for 20 people. As soon as she said that, my daughter-in-law, Nicola, started fiddling with her mobile phone as if she hadn't heard a word I said. Just when I thought I had been called over suddenly, I was hit with this outrageous request. Expecting me, a mother-in-law, to prepare a meal for 20 people all by myself. It's clearly unreasonable when you think about it, but I have a special skill up my sleeve. Nicola probably hopes that I won't be able to prepare the meal and end up embarrassing myself, but there is no certainty that I can't do it. I decided it was finally time to show Nicola that skills she was unaware of. My name is Alice, a 65-year-old homemaker. I live alone since my husband passed away. We had one son, Oliver, who has since left home, married and started his own family. I was genuinely happy when Oliver got married. Nicola seemed like a very sweet person, and I hoped that, despite being in-laws, we would get along well. But the reality wasn't so sweet. Alice, can you come over? I'm swamped with housework. You're free anyway, right? One day, while relaxing at home, I received such a call from Nicola. It takes only about a 10-minute walk from my house to Oliver and Nicola's, and we used to interact quite frequently. However, most of these interactions were due to Nicola's unreasonable demands. Again, didn't you say the same thing last week? Aren't you just being lazy? You are a homemaker, aren't you, Nicola? Frustrated by the frequent calls, I retorted sharply. Just come quickly, we're family, right? I'm asking for help, so you should help. You should be thankful I married your son. To which Nicola replied irritably. Nicola's hysterics were nothing new. After Oliver's marriage, Nicola, who I thought was kind and gentle, turned out to be someone who threw tantrums and tried to manipulate situations where things didn't go her way, just like a child who had grown up without changing. Even Oliver was troubled about what to do. No matter how many times I scolded her, Nicola's hysterics only got worse. We couldn't keep enduring such repetitive interactions. But curing hysterics isn't easy, especially if the person doesn't intend to reflect. So, when Nicola got angry, I tried not to provoke her too much and make compromises to calm her down quickly. All right, I'll come. Just calm down. Upon hearing my words, Really? Alice, you're so stubborn. You should have just agreed from the start. Nicola sighed. Her tone seemed a bit calmer, suggesting she might be returning to a more peaceful mental state. Honestly, I sometimes wonder why I have to do these things, but since Oliver can't handle Nicola, I have no choice. I took the bare minimum essentials and headed to Oliver and Nicola's house. Upon arrival, Nicola was standing at the entrance with her arms crossed. "Aren't you late? You didn't make a detour, did you?" She spoke as if to blame me. Indeed, I didn't come straight to Oliver and Nicola's house. Because it was almost dinner time, I thought of cooking for them and had bought ingredients. It's almost dinner time, isn't it? If you're not in the mood for housework, I thought you might find cooking troublesome too. So I brought some ingredients, I said calmly, trying not to convey any anger. If Nicola got angry, it would be a big problem. Thinking this, I spoke gently, but Nicola's face turned red with anger. "Why do you have to do unnecessary things? I didn't ask you to make dinner." Surprised by her sudden complaint, I unintentionally let out an, "Huh?" I was just trying to be considerate and prepare dinner, but what did I do wrong? Unable to comprehend the sheer irrationality of the situation, I tilted my head in confusion. "It makes you happy to take over all my tasks, doesn't it? If I lose all my work, Oliver won't need me anymore. I won't have a role as a homemaker. But you seem to struggle with the housework, so... Don't do things that aren't necessary. I'll make dinner, so throw away those ingredients. I won't let you help." With that, Nicola pointed at the eco bag I was holding in my hand. "Throwing it away? That's a joke. It is unthinkable to discard the ingredients I had carefully bought. I'm sorry for doing things my way, but throwing them away is..." I tried to treat carefully not to upset Nicola further, and spoke with a lowered voice, only to hear her sigh heavily. "Well, just for today. I'll let you cook, but make it look like I did it. Alice, you just watched me cook, okay?" So, she wants me to cook dinner and let her take the credit. This was utterly unreasonable. As I opened my mouth to object, "Oh, Alice, you don't have the right to refuse. If you don't like it, throw away those ingredients right now. You wouldn't want to waste food, right?" I was cornered with her words. Ultimately, I couldn't bear to waste the ingredients, so I ended up cooking dinner for Oliver and Nicola alone. When Oliver returned home and started eating dinner, "Tonight's dinner is really good," he praised it enthusiastically. Nicola momentarily looked displeased, but quickly put on a smile. "Everything went well today. I'm glad you enjoyed it," she said. Even though I was the one who made the meal, Nicola took all the credit. I was furious but knew that correcting Nicola's words would cause a huge scene, so, without denying Nicola's words, "Well done, Nicola," I could only compliment her. The relationship with Nicola continued to deteriorate over a long time. Being treated like a servant had become the norm. My physical and mental health began to suffer, and I often felt unwell. I knew I had to change this relationship soon, but I had no idea what to do. Then one day, an opportunity came. Early in the morning, "I need you to come over right now," Nicola called me. Rubbing my sleepy eyes, I went to Oliver and Nicola's house, only to be met with an unbelievable request. "Alice, you're free, right? If so, can you cook a meal for 20 people for a family gathering?" I was stunned by her words. A meal for 20 people? Now, all by myself? According to Nicola, today was a day for a meal with 20 of her relatives at their house. But she hadn't prepared anything and realized on the day that she couldn't prepare the meal. So I was the chosen one. "Just me? Aren't you going to help, Nicola?" "I'm busy. I have to do my makeup and all. You can have the meal instead today, Alice. Would care about someone gloomy like you." I felt infuriated by her demeaning attitude. I had been silently tolerating Nicola's behavior to avoid troubling Oliver, but this was too much. Reaching my limit, I decided to start my revenge. "Understood. I'll use the kitchen." When I meekly agreed, Nicola smiled contentedly. "Good to hear you are obedient today." "If only you were always like this." She left those words and lounged on the sofa, starting to play with her mobile phone. It seemed she had already prepared to welcome the 20 relatives. No matter what I said, Nicola wouldn't listen. But having already agreed, I couldn't bring myself to refuse. Nicola probably thinks I can't make a meal for 20 people and will end up embarrassing myself. But sorry, I can't let things go her way so easily. When I entered the kitchen, I found that Oliver must have bought all the necessary ingredients for a meal for 20 people. While looking at the ingredients, I quickly planned a menu. Actually, I used to be an elementary school lunch lady. I was accustomed to making lunch for nearly 1,000 people in the cafeteria, so I was quite experienced in preparing large quantities of food quickly. For a meal for 20 people, even if I had to plan the menu, I could finish it by noon if I started now. According to Nicola, the relatives wouldn't arrive until the evening, so I had some time to relax. Once I had a rough idea of the menu, I started cooking each dish, making sure it was cost-effective yet not too shabby in appearance. Having been a school lunch lady, I often ended up cooking more than a single person could eat, even when I was just making a regular meal. Preparing a meal for 20 was almost too easy for me, and I genuinely enjoyed the cooking process. Sometimes Nicola would come to check on me. "Are you getting emotional?" "Just give up already. It's impossible to cook for 20 people, you know." Or, "Maybe the relatives would be happier with fancy steaks than a meal from Alice." "Don't you get your hopes up." Her harsh words didn't bother me at all, as I was absorbed in enjoying my cooking. Nicola's words were like a flybite, insignificant. I could feel Nicola's mood deteriorating, perhaps frustrated that her words didn't affect me. In the past, I would have immediately apologized to Nicola and tried to cheer her up upon noticing this, but not anymore. I had decided to thoroughly turn Nicola's world upside down. Imagining the pain that awaited Nicola in the future, a smile crept onto my face. As the time passed, Nicola's relatives began to arrive. Although Nicola herself had a rather unfortunate personality, her relatives seemed decent enough, and some even offered to help when they saw me working in the kitchen. "Would you like some help?" they asked. Every time I received such kind words, Nicola would glare at me as if to say, "Don't accept their help." "I appreciate your offer. Please look forward to the meal." I bowed my head politely and said, "We are looking forward to it." I received warm words. Despite being treated terribly by Nicola, I had no grievances against her relatives. I put extra effort into the cooking to make sure they enjoyed their meal. When most of the required dishes were done, and I checked the time, it was still a bit early for dinner. Since I had some spare time, I decided to make a simple dessert. There were children present at today's gathering, after all. My favorite since childhood, crème brûlée. The spectacle of caramelizing the sugar with a burner right before serving is something you don't see every day and had always fascinated me as a child. I was sure they would enjoy it. As I started on the dessert, Nicola appeared in the kitchen. "Aren't you done yet with dinner? Isn't it a bit late?" Nicola laughed, looking down on me. She probably never expected that I had already finished the main dishes and was making dessert. "It's still early for dinner, isn't it? Can't you wait quietly a little longer?" I declined, and Nicola, seemingly displeased with my attitude, confronted me. "If you can't do it, just say so. The relatives seem concerned about you. Please don't ruin this gathering." "Don't worry, it's not impossible. I'll finish everything and serve the meal." Annoyed by her constant interference, I responded coldly, prompting Nicola to pout and leave the room. She couldn't throw a fit in front of the relatives. With a bit of leeway, I looked into the living room and saw Nicola, completely different from her usual self, smiling and chatting amiably with the relatives. Her true nature was clearly hidden. In the midst of all this, Oliver, who must have been at work today, returned home. Upon noticing that I was preparing everything alone in the kitchen, he immediately called Nicola over. "What's going on here? Why are you relaxing while Mom is doing all the work? Isn't that strange?" he questioned her. But Nicola, without losing a smile, "Alice wanted to do it, so I'm letting her. Besides, I'm busy with the relatives," replied. However, to be honest, it seemed more like the relatives were entertaining Nicola than the other way around. Nicola was the one doing all the talking, and the relatives were merely nodding along. They even ran out of drinks, and I had to offer to get more because Nicola did nothing. It could hardly be called hosting. Oliver, holding back his anger, "Mom, aren't you tired? I can't do much, but let me help you." Then asked me. But the cooking was almost finished, so I replied, "Thank you, but I'm fine. It will be ready soon." Both of them looked surprised. It was understandable. Making a meal for 20 people alone is an odd task. Most people would have given up from the start, but I kept pushing through. From early morning until now, it was all about cooking, cooking, cooking. Even though I was getting tired of it, I still had enough enthusiasm to enjoy it. In doing so, I realized once again just how much I love cooking and was even thankful to Nicola for giving me the opportunity to discover that. Just wait a bit longer. I need to make sure the relatives are well taken care of too. I hurried them along, and Oliver returned to the living room with Nicola. Seeing them off, I proceeded to the final touches of the meal. Done! Finally, all the dishes, including the dessert, were ready. Hearing this, Nicola, sounding surprised, rushed into the kitchen. There, a massive array of dishes was laid out on large platters. Unmistakably, they were all prepared by me today. How? Why? It's impossible to make a meal for 20 in one day! Nicola exclaimed, forgetting she was in front of her relatives. As the relatives gathered around due to the commotion, I started carrying the food to the living room with their help. Wow, this looks delicious! Wow, this looks delicious! I can't wait to eat! The excited voices of the children filled the air. I felt it was all worth it, but Nicola seemed unsatisfied. The taste is more important than the look. I'm sure it's not that good since it was rushed. Should we order delivery? She said this frantically to the relatives. Clearly, she couldn't accept the praise my cooking was receiving. It was terribly unfair of her to judge my cooking as good-looking but probably bad-tasting without even trying it. Apparently, I wasn't the only one who thought so. Nicola, it's not nice to say that when someone has cooked for us. We should be grateful and enjoy the meal, as a male relative said. He advised her calmly, and the other relatives agreed. That's right. Nicola's expression twisted, clearly upset. I secretly felt a bit pleased seeing that. Eventually, Oliver suggested, "Let's eat then," and everyone, except Nicola, took their seats. Nicola seemed too frustrated to move, but I wanted to taste my cooking, so I excused myself and sat down first. Everyone picked up their forks and started on the dishes. If one person said, "This is delicious," others joined in, saying, "Delicious, delicious," and enjoying the meal. Seeing this, I felt it was all worth the effort and sighed in contentment. Suddenly, Nicola, "Wait a minute," exclaimed. "I suspect that meal might be poisoned. Alice always harasses me. I asked her to cook today as a revenge. I thought she would refuse, but she made it so normally. There must be something fishy." Everyone, including myself, was shocked by such an outrageous accusation. Poison in the food? That's impossible. After all, I had been cooking in this house without going shopping, so if there was poison, it would imply that this house, which had the poison in the first place, was the problem. To accuse someone's cooking of having poison is just too much. Just because you don't like me doesn't mean you should say such things. I sighed as I said this, and Nicola angrily retorted, "But Alice is always mean. It's not normal for someone like you to quietly cook." "I haven't been mean at all. It's just you who has made me your enemy for no reason. Stop making baseless accusations. Besides, the food will get cold. Why don't you eat if you're going to?" My words seemed to irritate Nicola even more, and she continued to complain. It was so bothersome that it was nothing but a nuisance. Oliver frowned in concern, and even the children could tell something. "Aunt Nicola, what's wrong?" her niece was asking. Judging the atmosphere to be quite poor, I noticed the food was starting to dwindle in the children's pace of eating slowing, so I announced, "We also have dessert. the unbaked crème brûlée from the fridge, lighting up the children's eyes. Borrowing a gas burner from Oliver, I caramelized the top, eliciting "wow" from everyone. The mood was lifted. Seeing this, Nicola realized she couldn't do anything more and just sat down on the spot. But the relatives didn't seem to care about Nicola's behavior, focusing on "this is delicious, that's tasty," enjoying the meal. Nicola, feeling utterly defeated and likely overwhelmed by embarrassment, soon retreated to her room. No one, not even her parents who had attended the dinner, seemed concerned or bothered to check on her. Honestly, it felt like just desserts. The dinner was a huge success. However, Nicola's attitude towards me worsened, constantly coming over to say terrible things. Her behavior escalated, and even Oliver, who had sensed the tension between us, felt it was too much. Eventually, Oliver and Nicola divorced, and the house became Oliver's. Nicola went back to her parents' house, but they were furious with her and didn't let her in. Now, Nicola lives alone in an old apartment, making ends meet with a part-time job. As for me, I sold my old house and moved in with Oliver. Awakened by the joy of cooking, I started a cooking class. Surrounded by students, I'm living a happy life. Dealing with Nicola was honestly tough. It was stressful, and being burdened with all the housework was unbearable. Having my efforts taken for granted was unpleasant. But the meal I spent a whole day making to thwart Nicola brought me happiness. Thinking about it, I feel proud of myself for continuing to cook earnestly. I will keep making many more dishes, always putting my heart into each one, sincerely engaging with cooking.